People who have survived an attempted murder, what is your story? I was 13. My mother was screaming. Legit screaming. Not the yelling that a lot of people call screaming. They are different. Trust me. At me because I made a tuna sandwich for lunch and didn't make one for her. She was a courier and I never knew when she would be home and when she wouldn't. These were the days before everyone had a cell phone. And she frequently bought lunch on the road. I was done with lunch before she got home. But she still flipped. I was selfish. A horrible daughter, etc. Anyway, as she was screaming, I was backing away from her until I was pressed against the sink cabinet. She kept coming towards me. I swear to God before I knew what was happening or could process register, she had the scissors out of the knife block in her hand and she was still coming towards me. Scissor points directed at me. I screamed bloody murder. My brother came rushing out of his room, right off the kitchen, as she started swinging them down at my throat. He caught her hand maybe 2 inches away from my skin, and she was coming at me with enough force that there was still some forward momentum for him to counter. If he had not been there, they would have been buried in my throat. To this day, she doesn't understand why I have nothing to do with her, and the closest thing I've ever received to an apology was "I'm sorry you're not over that." Yeah, she's since been diagnosed as a narcissistic sociopath. Imagine my utter lack of surprise. I delivered a pizza to a house just outside of the city. On the way back, I stopped to help a car that pulled over in front of me with their hazard lights on. I pulled up beside them and thought it was weird that nobody rolled down a window or made any kind of contact with me for around 15 seconds. The passenger then jumped out of his side of the car yelling that they needed help as he made his way toward my car. I thought something was weird about this. As I started to pull away before he could get to my passenger door, he began shooting at me. I ducked my head after the first shot entered through the back window and embedded in my passenger seat headrest. Another shot entered through the rear window, while the other 3 only hit the outside metal parts of my car. He missed altogether with another shot. I remember being sure I was about to die as he fired more shots at me. I was very surprised that it wasn't panicky. It was just like, oh, I guess this is it. Turns out it was a plot to rob me. The pizza was ordered and the guys were stationed down the road to intercept me. They knew who I was and they knew that I would be able to recognize them, as I had delivered a few orders to them before. The guy wasn't wearing anything to cover his identity, which leads me to believe that he would have shot and killed me if he would have made it inside my car. By the next morning they had all been arrested. The shooter was found guilty of attempted murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison. He later appealed that sentencing because there was a word wrong in the jury instructions. He won the appeal and ended up being sentenced to 10 years, and was released November of 2010 after 5 years. The remaining 5 years were to be served as parole probation. He was arrested twice for parole probation violation when he was only a couple months away from total freedom. I laughed. TLDR. Some people tried to murder me for pizza money. They shot. They missed. They got caught. They did time. But not enough. Then did more. I feel like I am very late to the party, but my uncle was attempted murdered by random and pure bad luck. He was living in a high rise and some crackhead pressed every single buzzer. Someone let him in out of laziness, not caring, wanting the buzzer to stop. The crackhead proceeded to knock on every single door down the hallways and my uncle is the first to answer the door. The crackhead pulls out a pair of scissors and plunges them into his throat. The crackhead then nonchalantly walks out of the building and says to a passing couple, "You should probably call the police because I just murdered someone." He was picked up very quickly, and my uncle survived for a year or two before his epilepsy killed him. Edit. In addition, it was a very small world, as my uncle went to school with this crackhead 30 years earlier, and knew his name to identify him. Not that there needed any more evidence in the case. My brother is a drug addict, and he held my dad and I hostage, saying he was going to kill us after he pulled out a gun. He fired it at the upper wall ceiling at first to show us it was a real gun, and my mom was by the front door and able to run out. I wasn't 100% sure he noticed I was still inside, so I had run into the only room that locked, which was the bathroom, and hid behind the toilet. I eventually let him know my location by begging him to let us go, and we wouldn't call the police. He said he'd drag me out by the hair and shoot me first if my dad didn't give him any money eventually. My dad had convinced him there was money in the basement that my mom had hidden, and I ran out the front door. It was a single level house. My mom was on the phone with the police from a neighbor's house. What was scariest is that we were in a pretty rural area that had turkey hunting in the woods behind us. I heard a shot from the woods and assumed it was my brother murdering my dad. I had lived in a lot of fear up until that point anyway because my brother was generally violent and scary. When I was a kid, probably around 2nd grade, our house got robbed and my mom and I came home while it was in progress. For whatever reason, she decided to go in and interrupt them. She grabbed her gun, didn't shoot, yelled at them to get the fuck out of my house, and then we drove off in a hurry to the corner store to call the cops. This was before cell phones. Less than 2 weeks later, my mom and I are sitting in the living room on the couch, our backs to the front door. Someone drives by and fires about 6 or 8 shots into the front of our house. Thank God for a steel front door. The cops came and said they didn't think the 2 incidents were related. Lived in PNW and had a heavily intoxicated driver smash into a parked SUV on a downtown Seattle street. Recorded it, had the plate number, etc. Called the cops and reported it and followed them as they made their way to the highway. We passed 2 patrol cars just cruising. Dispatcher let the car go. Detectives tried to call me 2 times and gave up, while the victim whose car got destroyed suffered for years and never really got justice. Open and shut case and they just couldn't be bothered. Dude that was driving was connected somehow. Son of a judge or an off-duty cop or something. They knew who he was from the plate and let him go. Probably had a good laugh about it later. I have a friend who just yesterday had a gun pointed in his face while rescuing a neighbor from an elder abuse situation. He was trying to literally force the door open while a gimpy old man with a broken leg got out. His 2 children were the ones who broke his leg, and were holding him hostage in his home for his SSI checks. My friend called the cops and they wouldn't even come because they are busy breaking up homeless camps that are popping up like herpes. Stay classy, Eugene. My parents moved to Mozambique during the mid-90s. I was around 8 at the time and started going to school there. A nice private one. Can't complain. My father was working for the Red Cross in Chimoio, so we had a comfortable life. One day, before arriving to school with a friend of mine, some sketchy guy stopped us, offered a whole bunch of money to just take some small box to a white van that was parked at the end of the street, not even 100 meters away. My lucky day, I guessed. It actually was, but for different reasons. When I was going to go grab the box, my friend grabbed me by the shirt, pushed me, and started running, screaming something I didn't understand in Shona, the local dialect. That moment was when it clicked. The moment I looked back, the guy had already vanished. So, wherever you are, thank you, Chud. I will never forget you. My mom attempted to murder me and my sister when we were younger. She was going through a psychotic episode and pretty suicidal, and I said the wrong thing that set her off. She chased us down to the basement with a knife. We ran into my room and my sister hid in the closet while I tried to fight my mom off at the door. She was trying to push it open while I was trying to push it closed. It was a back and forth struggle until she put her hand in the door. I think she was trying to engage my non-violence because she thought I wouldn't shut the door on her hand. But I slammed the door over and over again until her fingers broke. Meanwhile, my dad, who was in the house, finally came downstairs to check in what was happening. Mind you, this all happened very fast and my dad has a habit of zoning out when my mom gets in her episodes. He ended up pulling her off of the door and my sister and I ran out of the house and jumped in our van. He drove around the corner and turned off the lights and we all ducked down in our seats to hide and stayed there until my dad saw her drive our other car off. Please tell me this had consequences for your mother. I truly wish it did. She never told anyone about the attempted murder, and afterward it became something that she said she couldn't remember and blacked out during. I never told my other siblings. They were older and out of the house already, and the sister who hid in the closet and I only rarely discuss it. My sister was able to largely avoid psychological trauma due to not seeing most of it, but obviously since I was face to face with it, I'm a little messed up. So I had seizures when I was younger, so the fact that I remember this is amazing to me. My dad was driving my sisters and I to the new home he and my mother had just purchased like a few weeks before, when a woman who had wanted to commit death drove head on in my dad's lane. I remember him switching to the opposite lane a few times, and each time the woman would switch as well, still driving straight for our car. We didn't get hit and cops were called and explained that the woman was trying to kill herself. I don't know what happened to the woman, but I mean I lived. My family and I didn't have any injuries, but we were pretty shaken up. Some tried to mug me and stabbed me in the wrong place, so I survived. Didn't see his face, so he got away with it. Sounds like you got stabbed in the right place. It wasn't me but my uncle. When I was a kid, around a decade ago, my uncle got shot while coming out of a bar with a few friends. His friend got hit once in his shoulder but was fine. My uncle, on the other, got hit 3 times. Once in the colon, lung, and heart. By all rights the shooter had gotten him and drove away. His friends rushed him to the hospital and, with a bullet lodged in his heart and blood entering his lung, he managed to survive. He was in a lot of pain for a long time, but since then he's gotten his life together and is getting married in about a year. Edit. I appreciate all the shot through the heart puns, Lmao. Keep them coming if you have more. Bullet to the heart and he survived. That's crazy. I posted this story already a long while back. But basically, I worked in a jail and a guy from a 1% biker gang tried to pay $10,000 to have me killed because he somehow got the idea that I was the Fed who busted him and was merrily pretending to be a jailer so I could spy on him. Don't do meth, kids. The guy was bragging about it, and one of the other inmates who I had saved from a heart attack with first aid didn't like that, so he beat the living shit out of the guy and then told me about it. Phone call recordings confirmed that he had promised the money to 2 guys if they shot me in the back of the head while escorting him to court and busted him out. Federal marshals rolled them up, and on his way to court I whispered to him, "Your friends won't be joining us," when we got to the planned ambush point. Instead of a bond hearing, he got charged for trying to have me murdered and organizing an escape. Did the inmate who informed you on the potential killer get any reward? He was in for drug issues. I got him enrolled in a treatment program, and the county attorney agreed to drop other charges that weren't drug related in order for him to attend. Neighbor stabbed me in the chest because I hit him over the head twice with a 10-pound weight to try to stop him stabbing his wife. However, I'm fat and the knife didn't go deep enough through my breast tissue to do any damages. Yay for being fat. He's still up for attempted murder though.